What happens when a beloved global superstar walks into a television studio expecting charm and celebration, only to be met with condescension and barbed insinuations from a host hiding behind a smirk and a stack of cue cards? What happens when the usual late-night banter transforms into a subtle but brutal takedown, where the guest realizes she's not being interviewed, she's being ambushed? Tonight, we unravel a moment that didn't just ripple through the entertainment world, detonated it. Jennifer Lopez, poised and radiant, didn't just storm off Jimmy Kimmel's set. She set the whole narrative ablazing. Millions watched as Hollywood's facade cracked on live television. It was supposed to be just another Tuesday night taping of Jimmy Kimmel Live. The studio buzzed as it always did, lights humming, crew members rushing between last-minute adjustments, the audience hyped and clapping on cue. But there was something different in the air that night. Jennifer Lopez had just walked onto the stage in an emerald green gown that shimmered like liquid glass under the lights. Her energy was commanding, every movement precise, every smile dazzling. The crowd erupted in applause, a sea of admiration for a woman who had conquered music, film, fashion, and business with grit and glamour. She waved, smiled, and took her seat with the kind of poise only decades in the public eye can perfect. Her legs crossed gracefully. She adjusted a loose strand of hair and flashed that trademark smile. Across from her, Jimmy Kimmel leaned forward, clapping along with the audience before throwing her a wide grin. "Jennifer Lopez, everybody," he announced. "You look absolutely incredible. Seriously, just ... Wow." Jennifer chuckled softly, a genuine warmth in her voice. "Thank you, Jimmy. It's great to be here." The pleasantries exchanged. It seemed like any other talk show setup, but within seconds, the tone would shift, and the interview would nosedive into dangerous territory. Kimmel shuffled, his cue cards with the casual flair of a man who's done this hundreds of times. "Now listen," he began. "We've got so much to talk about: your upcoming movie, the new tour, the fashion line. But before we get into all that, I gotta ask ... He leaned in, eyes twinkling with mischief. ... What single quotes has the deal with all this tabloid noise about your performances?" There was a moment of stillness. Jennifer's smile didn't vanish, but it cooled. Her posture didn't change, yet something in her presence did. A subtle pullback, like someone mentally bracing for a storm. "Oh boy," she said, her voice light but guarded. "What are they saying now?" Kimmel laughed, but it was sharp at the edges. "You know, people have opinions. Some are saying, you've lost a step, that maybe the energy isn't quite what it used to be. I mean, you're not 25 anymore." He delivered it with the tone of a joke, but there was no mistaking the intent. The words hit the air like shards of glass. Jennifer blinked. "Excuse me," she said, her voice still pleasant but underpinned with steel. "Are you seriously asking me if I'm too old to perform?" "I'm just saying what people are thinking." Kimmel shrugged. "There's chatter. Some say your dance moves aren't as sharp. Your vocals, maybe a little off. Maybe it's time to pivot more into the business side of things." The audience shifted, their laughter faltering. Some looked around, wondering if they'd misheard. Jennifer's fingers tightened around the armrest. "Let me clarify something," she said, her tone cooling to ice. "I've been in this industry longer than some of your audience members have been alive. I've headlined global tours, sold millions of records, starred in blockbuster films, and built companies from the ground up. And now you're sitting there, suggesting I retire. Hey, Kimmel raised his hands in mock defense. "Don't shoot the messenger. I just asked the questions." Jennifer leaned forward slightly. "And maybe you should start asking better ones." The mood in the studio grew tense. What had started as a friendly sit-down was now crackling with electricity. The cameras kept rolling, the crew frozen in place. Kimmel, perhaps sensing an opportunity for viral gold or simply refusing to yield, smirked. "Come on. Even you have to admit it's a young person's game." At a certain point, the audience moves on. "The audience," she repeated. "You mean the same audience that sells out my shows in minutes? The same audience that floods every red carpet I walk down? Don't confuse your cynicism for the public's opinion." "Well," Kimmel said, eyes glinting, "isn't it fair to say there's a bit of desperation in trying to keep up with artists half your age?" That word, desperation. It hit like a slap. Jennifer didn't move, didn't flinch, but her eyes fierce, unyielding, locked onto his. "Did you just call me desperate?" she said, her voice low and deadly calm. On national television, Kimmel hesitated, the grin faltering for a split second. "I mean, if the shoe fits... Jennifer's laugh came sharp and humorless. "Honest television, huh? Is that what this is? You lure me here under the pretense of a normal interview and try to humiliate me for clicks. For your own amusement." Kimmel shrugged again. "I didn't write the headlines. I'm just asking what people are already thinking." "No," she said, her voice rising. "What you're doing is feeding the narrative that successful women must explain themselves, that aging is a weakness, that relevance is a young man's game. Well, let me explain something to you, Jimmy. I'm not here to be dissected. The studio fell into a stunned silence. Even Kimmel looked uncertain now, his usual smirking mask slipping. Okay, he muttered. Maybe let's just tone it down a little. Didn't realize this was such a sensitive topic. Sensitive, Jennifer repeated, now fully upright in her chair. You think this is about sensitivity? This is about dignity, respect. Something you clearly lack. The room shifted again, the air heavy with tension. Audience members began exchanging worried glances. Some reached for their phones. They knew they were watching something real, raw and unforgettable. Kimmel, floundering, tried again. Look, I'm just saying what others are afraid to say. Even legends face decline. Madonna share, it's just part of the business. Jennifer's eyes narrowed. Don't you dare compare me to other women like we're all cut from the same cloth. Don't sit there and act like you're being brave by insulting me. You're not being edgy, you're being small. Kimmel's face flushed. I've had dozens of successful women on this show. None of them ever reacted like this. Maybe because none of them were ambushed like this, she fired back. Or maybe they were too polite to call you out. But I'm not here to be polite. I'm here to stand my ground. For the first time, Kimmel looked uneasy, his body shrinking back slightly in the chair. Jennifer, meanwhile, had risen. The chair squeaked back as she stood, towering over the desk. You want to know what desperate looks like, she said, each word slicing the air. It's a man who hides behind cue cards and writers, who tries to belittle a woman because her success makes him uncomfortable. The audience was no longer just watching, they were riveted, hanging on every syllable. Jennifer glanced around, at the sea of silent faces. Then she looked back at the man who had once held all the power in that room, and now looked like he wished he could disappear. I've been underestimated. My entire life, doubted, dismissed, and I'm still here. You, she gestured at him, disgust written across her face. You're just another name in a long line of men who tried and failed to break me. Before Kimmel could respond, Jennifer turned to the cameras. I want everyone watching to know this is what happens when a woman refuses to be diminished. When she walks into a room and commands it. When she leaves it without apologizing. And then, without another glance, she walked off the set. Jennifer's heels echoed like thunderclaps on the studio floor as she walked away from the stunned set, not looking back, not hesitating. The cameras were still rolling, but the moment had already spiraled far beyond anything that could be edited or spun. Behind her, Jimmy Kimmel sat frozen, his expression blank, his smirk wiped clean. The audience remained in stunned silence, and the crew, normally a well-oiled machine, stood motionless. Jennifer didn't just exit the stage, she reclaimed it with every step, reminding everyone watching that power is not given, it's taken. Backstage, the tension was thick and suffocating. Producers scrambled, whispering frantically into headsets. Assistants darted between hallways, unsure whether to chase after Jennifer or corral Kimmel into damage control. But no, one moved quickly enough to stop the wave that was already cresting. Social media lit up within seconds. Hashtags exploded across platforms. Clips of Jennifer's takedown were uploaded, edited, and shared faster than anyone could issue a statement. And Jennifer, no apologies and composed, walked straight out of the building without uttering another word to anyone. Meanwhile, on stage, Kimmel fumbled to recover. Ah, well, folks, he muttered awkwardly into the microphone, trying to smile but failing. That was ... unexpected. A few people chuckled nervously, unsure whether to laugh or leave. He leaned back in his chair, sweat beading at his temples, desperately trying to pivot. We'll be right back after this break. The commercial cue played, but there was no applause, no laughter, only silence and confusion. And the cameras cut to black. But the real show had only just begun. Within an hour, every major entertainment outlet had picked up the story. Headlines screamed across the digital sphere. Jennifer Lopez destroys Jimmy Kimmel on live TV. J-Lo walks out, mid-interview. Here's why. Talk show takedown. Kimmel, humiliated in own house. By the next morning, the story dominated the news cycle. Clips of the confrontation were played on morning shows, dissected on radio, debated on podcasts, and captioned endlessly across TikTok and Instagram. In the days that followed, the fallout only grew. The industry began whispering. Was this the moment Kimmel's charm finally failed him? Was Jennifer Lopez an icon of strength and longevity? Finally the one to say what many had silently endured. Former guests began chiming in, some subtly, some loudly. Stories surfaced. Tales of backhanded jokes, smug digs, and gotcha moments from past interviews began reappearing in new light. A narrative was forming, and it wasn't in Jimmy Kimmel's favor. And Jennifer, she didn't say a word. Not right away, at least. Instead, she let the moment breathe. She let the footage speak for itself. She allowed the world to see what had unfolded, unfiltered and unedited. And that silence, measured, strategic, spoke louder than any press release ever could. When she did break her silence, it wasn't on a talk show or in a gossip magazine. It was through a single, powerful video posted to her personal account. No studio lighting, no flashy background, just Herculean-faced, direct, sitting in front of a simple window with soft daylight casting across her. This industry, she began, her voice, steady and low, has a long history of pretending that strong women are threats instead of leaders, that if we demand respect, we're difficult, that if we speak up, we're emotional, that if we age, we're obsolete. And I'm here to say enough. She paused, her eyes unwavering. I didn't walk off that stage because I was angry. I walked off because I refused to let anyone, anywhere, diminish my worth, not after everything I've built, not after everything I've given. We are not guests in this industry. We are the foundation. And it's time we stop letting people treat us like we're lucky to be invited. The video went viral within minutes. Celebrities reposted it. Activists praised it. Fans flooded her page with messages of support. Even critics found themselves forced to acknowledge that the moment had struck a nerve across generational, gender, and industry lines. It wasn't just about a bad interview anymore, it was about a shift, a reckoning. Meanwhile, Jimmy Kimmel remained silent. His team released a short statement the following day that read, in part, "We regret that last night's interview did not go as intended. We have great respect for Ms. Lopez and her career, but the damage had already been done." The internet was merciless. Late-night monologues from rival hosts couldn't resist taking jabs. Some called it the Lopez lesson. Others called it the Kimmel collapse. One comedian joked, "Jimmy's desk is now officially the most dangerous seat in Hollywood." Still, Jennifer wasn't done. She appeared 2 weeks later at a women's leadership summit in Los Angeles. No press junket, no red carpet, just a panel discussion filled with powerhouse figures. When asked about the incident, she smiled softly before answering. "That wasn't the first time I had to defend myself," she said. "But it might be. The last time someone tries me like that." The audience erupted in applause. The moment became iconic, not just for what happened on that stage, but for what followed after. The grace, the strength, the refusal to let humiliation define the narrative. Jennifer Lopez had walked into that studio as a guest, but she walked out as a symbol. A reminder that no matter how high you rise, someone will always try to knock you down, but how you respond, that's what makes you legendary. Producers began scrambling to reevaluate the formats of other shows. Talk show hosts started watching their tone. Publicists doubled down on pre-interview agreements. Studios began holding internal reviews about how female guests were being prepped and treated. In the industry, quietly, uncomfortably, began to change. And still, Jennifer didn't gloat. She didn't mock. She didn't retaliate. She just kept working, announcing her tour dates, launching a new philanthropic project, and showing up on red carpets with the same unshakable grace. Every time she appeared in public, the press couldn't help but frame it through the lens of the confrontation. But to Jennifer, it wasn't a confrontation, it was a declaration, a statement that no one, no matter how famous or favored, had the right to make her feel small. She'd weathered worse. She'd survived industries that chewed people up and spat them out. She'd navigated betrayals, divorces, media harassment, and comebacks. And she'd always done it on her own terms. That night with Jimmy Kimmel wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. A shift in how the world sees powerful women when they refuse to play nice. A moment when silence was no longer an option. A live confrontation that became a global movement. By the time award season rolled around, Jennifer walked every carpet with her head held higher than ever. Paparazzi shouted questions, but she never commented on the moment. Not because she was avoiding it, but because she had already said everything that needed to be said. And unlike the man she left speechless on that stage, she didn't need to repeat herself. Jimmy Kimmel returned to his show, of course. But something had changed. The interviews were more cautious. The jokes less sharp. The charisma a little less convincing. Some guests pulled out of scheduled appearances. Others brought their own teams to review scripts ahead of time. The vibe had shifted. He knew it. Everyone knew it. No one said it out loud, but the shadow of Jennifer Lopez still loomed over that stage like a reminder of how power can be reclaimed. With a single word, a single step, a single refusal to stay silent. And in living rooms around the world, young women watched that clip over and over. They saw themselves in her strength, her poise, her fire. They saw what it looked like to say enough, to draw the line, to walk away without losing an ounce of dignity. Jennifer Lopez didn't just walk off a talk show. She walked into history. So, what do you think? Was Jennifer Lopez right to take a stand? Was Jimmy Kimmel's line of questioning justified in the name of tough interviews? Or was this simply the overdue end of an outdated form of media ambush masquerading as entertainment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell, because in this industry, the real stories, the ones with fire, fallout, and fearless women, are just getting started.